I never thought the day my husband introduced me to his old college friend would be the day my entire world shifted. But from the second I saw her face, my stomach dropped like I had been punched by fate itself. She wasn't just some random classmate he used to study with. She was someone I knew all too well, someone I had prayed I'd never see again. My heart started pounding in my chest as if it was warning me that danger had just walked right into my living room. I forced a smile, trying to hide the storm raging inside me, but the memory of who she really was kept clawing at the edges of my mind. The moment her eyes met mine, I knew she recognized me too. She tilted her head slightly, almost as if testing how much I remembered about our past, and in that split second, I felt the room shrink around us. My husband, oblivious, was laughing and reminiscing about their college days, while I sat frozen on the couch, every nerve in my body on high alert. She reached out to shake my hand, and her grip lingered just a little too long, her smile a little too sharp, like a knife hidden inside a velvet glove. I couldn't help but notice how quickly she had made herself comfortable, how she leaned closer to my husband, how her laughter filled the room like she belonged here. I wanted to scream at him, to ask him why of all people this had to be the one he brought into our lives, but I bit my tongue, swallowing the bitterness that threatened to spill. My husband glanced at me and said, "Isn't it funny, honey? After all these years, I finally get to introduce you to her." I forced a nod, but my eyes never left hers, because I knew something he didn't. This woman wasn't just an old friend. She was a ghost from my past, a person who had once betrayed me in a way that left scars I thought had healed. And now here she was, back in my life, sitting a few feet away, pretending to be harmless. My husband's smile was so genuine, so proud, and I hated that I had to crush it one day. But in that moment, all I could think was, why her? Why now? And how long could I keep my secret before everything exploded? The night after she left, I lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling while my husband snored softly beside me, completely unaware of the storm that had just entered our home. I replayed every moment of her visit in my head, every sly glance, every smirk she tried to hide, every way she leaned just a little too close to him, and I felt my blood boil. Years ago, she had been my closest friend, the one I trusted with my secrets, until the day she betrayed me in the worst possible way by spreading lies that nearly destroyed my reputation and tore my family apart. I had cut her off, swearing never to let her near my life again, but life has a cruel way of circling back. Now she was back, smiling at my husband, as if she had every right to be there, as if the pain she caused me had been erased by time. I wanted to tell him the truth right then, but a small voice in my head warned me that she hadn't shown up by accident. She had a reason, and I needed to find it before I revealed anything. My husband spoke so highly of her, bragging about how they used to pull all-nighters together in college, how she had helped him pass some difficult classes, and I could see the admiration in his eyes. That admiration terrified me, because I knew how skilled she was at twisting people's emotions to her advantage. The next morning she texted him, asking if he wanted to grab coffee to catch up, and he showed me the message with a smile, saying, "She's just so excited to be back in town." I swallowed hard and told him it sounded great, but inside I was burning. I needed to stay calm, I told myself, because if I acted too soon he'd think I was just jealous, and she'd win. I decided to shadow her, to watch every move she made, and to prepare myself for whatever game she was planning. She wasn't going to sneak into my life again and tear it apart. This time I was ready, but little did I know, she had already begun planting her poison, and by the time I realized it, my husband would be looking at me with doubt in his eyes, wondering if maybe his old friend was more trustworthy than his own wife. A few days later, she came over again. this time with a bottle of wine and that same bright smile that seemed to hide something darker underneath. My husband welcomed her in like she was family, pouring glasses, laughing at her stories, while I sat quietly at the table, watching how quickly she slipped into our lives as if she had always belonged. She asked me casual questions, but her eyes told a different story. There was a challenge in them, a reminder of the past only we shared. When she leaned over to refill my husband's glass and her hand brushed his arm, I saw the way he blushed, just slightly, and it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I wanted to scream, but instead, I clenched my fists under the table, my nails digging into my skin to keep myself from exploding. At one point she laughed and said, "Remember those nights we used to stay up until sunrise? You were unstoppable back then." My husband grinned, clearly enjoying the trip down memory lane, while I forced out a polite laugh that sounded hollow even to my own ears. Later that night, after she left, I asked him, "So how often do you plan on meeting her?" He gave me a puzzled look and said, "What do you mean? She's just a friend, and she's only in town for a short time. Don't you think it's nice to reconnect with people from the past?" I nodded, biting back the words that were screaming inside me. Not this person. Not her. But I knew if I said it now, without proof of what she was trying to do, he would think I was being unreasonable. And that's exactly what she wanted. To paint me as the jealous wife, insecure and controlling, while she slowly made herself look innocent. The next day, I caught her texting him again. This time something more playful. A joke about how his wife must think she's stealing him away. I pretended not to notice, but inside I knew this was her plan all along, to get between us, to test how far she could go before I broke. What she didn't know was that I had no intention of breaking. If she wanted to play this game, I was ready to play it better, because she might have fooled me once in the past, but she would never fool me again. It was on a Saturday afternoon when I saw the first real crack in the mask she wore, and it confirmed every fear I had. My husband had stepped out to grab groceries, leaving her and me alone in the kitchen, and the second the door closed behind him, her smile shifted into something colder, sharper, more dangerous. She leaned against the counter, crossed her arms, and said, "You really think he won't see through you eventually?" The words were like a slap across my face, but I held myself together, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I asked calmly, "What are you talking about?" She smirked and replied, "You know exactly what I mean. He's too good for you, and it's only a matter of time before he realizes it. Maybe I'll be the one to help him see the truth." My blood boiled, but I forced a steady voice saying, "If you think you can walk into my marriage and tear it apart, you're in for a rude awakening." She laughed, that same cruel laugh I remembered from years ago, and whispered, "You couldn't stop me before. What makes you think you can stop me now?" Before I could respond, the sound of the front door opening cut through the air, and instantly she put her sweet mask back on, calling out to my husband in the same cheerful tone as if nothing had happened. He walked into the room, completely unaware of the venom that had just passed between us, and I plastered on a smile to hide the rage bubbling inside me. Later that night, I watched him talk about her like she was some long-lost treasure, completely oblivious to the poison she carried. That was when I made my decision. I wasn't going to wait for her to make her move. I was going to get ahead of her. If she thought she could manipulate my husband, she clearly underestimated me. I started paying closer attention to her words, her gestures, the little lies she planted, and I began quietly collecting evidence. Every sly look, every inappropriate text, every whispered insult when no one else could hear, I stored it all away. Because when the time came, I wasn't going to confront her blindly. No. When the time came, I would strike with proof so undeniable that even my husband would see her for what she really was. I started to see her pattern more clearly, like watching a predator circle its prey, and I knew I had to be smarter than her if I wanted to protect what was mine. She was always finding excuses to be near my husband, dropping by with coffee, sending him photos of funny things that reminded her of college, even calling him late in the evening with flimsy reasons that stretched into long conversations. At first, he brushed it off as harmless nostalgia, but I saw the way her eyes lingered, the way her smile grew just a little too wide when he laughed, and I knew she was trying to weave herself into his heart one thread at a time. Instead of confronting her outright, I decided to turn her own arrogance against her. I began to act polite, even friendly, offering her tea when she visited, asking questions about her life, nodding as she spoke as though I trusted her. She seemed to take my calmness as weakness, because soon she started testing me more openly. One afternoon when my husband stepped away to take a call, she leaned across the couch toward me and whispered, "You know he lights up when I'm around, don't you? It's like the years melt away for him." My chest tightened, but I forced a smile and replied, "I'm glad he has someone to remind him of old times." I could see the confusion flicker in her eyes for a moment. She wanted me to explode, to lose control, but instead I handed her nothing but composure. What she didn't know was that I had started documenting everything. The texts she sent, the calls she made, the looks she thought no one noticed. I even began recording small snippets of our conversations when she let her mask slip, storing them away like ammunition for the day I would need them. At night, when my husband was asleep, I would scroll through the evidence I had collected, each piece hardening my resolve. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was his shield, and I was ready to show her that I was not someone she could break twice. She thought she was setting the stage, but in reality, she was walking straight into the trap I was building for her, step by arrogant step. I kept my voice steady at home, acting like nothing was wrong, but inside I was calculating every move she made like a chess game I couldn't afford to lose. She thought she was clever, slipping in little comments to my husband, laughing about the past, even sending him playful late-night texts that she pretended were innocent. What she didn't know was that I was documenting everything. I started saving screenshots of her messages when his phone was left on the table, forwarding them quietly to myself so there would be no trace. I downloaded an app that recorded calls, and soon I had her voice whispering things like, "I miss how we used to be," and "Don't let her keep you from being who you really are." Each word made my stomach twist, but it also fueled me to stay patient, because I knew the day would come when I'd need proof strong enough to shatter her act. One afternoon, I followed her when she said she was meeting a client, only to watch her sit in a cafe alone, rehearsing lines into her phone, smiling to herself like she was practicing for a performance. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about my husband. This was about control, about her twisted need to win no matter the cost. I took photos, careful not to be seen, and added them to my growing file. At home, I started asking my husband simple questions, gently planting seeds without revealing too much. "Do you think she ever crossed the line back in college?" I asked casually, and though he laughed it off, I saw the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. That flicker was all I needed. It meant the wall she built around him wasn't as strong as she believed. Meanwhile, I pretended to warm up to her, even suggesting we should hang out more, and she took the bait easily, mistaking my calm for weakness. She even began texting me directly, gloating about how much fun she and my husband had, mocking me in subtle ways she thought wouldn't leave marks. But every cruel word was saved, every laugh recorded, every fake smile captured. She thought she was playing me, but the truth was, I was letting her build her own noose. All I had to do was wait for the perfect moment to tighten it. The trap began to tighten on a Friday evening when I suggested we host a small dinner at our house, inviting a few mutual friends along with her, pretending it was just to celebrate the weekend. My husband loved the idea, completely unaware that I had already set everything up to expose the truth. I arranged the seating carefully, placing her right across from me so I could watch every glance, every smirk, while I had my phone discreetly recording the entire evening. At first, she played the role of the charming guest, laughing, sipping wine, showering compliments on everyone. But the more she drank, the looser her tongue became. I nudged the conversation toward old relationships and betrayals, knowing it would trigger her pride. And sure enough, she leaned forward with that same arrogant grin I remembered from years ago and said, "Some people are so blind they don't even realize when the person next to them is mine for the taking." The table went quiet, a few awkward chuckles filling the air, but I kept my face calm, even though my heart was pounding. My husband frowned, a little confused, but she covered it with a laugh, saying it was just a joke. Later, when the guests left and she lingered behind as she always did, she cornered me in the kitchen. Her words were slurred but sharp. "He's already halfway in my hands, you know. He looks at me the way he used to look at you, and soon you'll be nothing but a shadow in this house." I didn't respond. I just smiled softly, because I knew my phone was still recording every word. When my husband walked in moments later, she switched back to her sweet mask, but I saw the doubt flicker in his eyes for the first time, like he sensed something wasn't adding up. That was all I needed, just that tiny seed of suspicion planted in his mind. I knew then that the endgame was near, that soon she would push herself too far, and when she did, I'd be ready to pull the curtain back and show him the monster hiding behind his old college friend. The breaking point came sooner than I expected, and it happened on a night that should have been ordinary. My husband had worked late, and she decided to drop by with dinner for him, pretending to be thoughtful, pretending to be helpful. But really she was testing the waters again. I let her in, calm on the outside but seething inside, and as she placed the food on the table, she whispered, "Why don't you just step aside? He'd be happier with me, and deep down you know it." I stared at her in silence, letting her believe I was cornered. But then I said softly, "It's funny how confident you are when you don't know what I've been collecting." Her smirk faltered for the first time, her eyes narrowing, and she hissed, "What are you talking about?" I leaned closer and said, "Every text, every phone call, every little thing you've said when you thought no one was listening, I have it all." She scoffed, trying to brush it off, but I saw the flicker of fear she couldn't hide. Right at that moment, the door opened and my husband walked in, tired but smiling, until he saw the tension between us. She quickly rushed to him, clinging to his arm, saying, "She's being paranoid again. She thinks I'm trying to take you away." But before he could respond, I pulled out my phone, pressed play, and filled the room with her own voice. "He's already halfway in my hands. Soon you'll be nothing but a shadow in this house." The color drained from her face as my husband's eyes widened, the smile on his lips vanishing into shock. She stammered, "That's not—" "I didn't mean it like that." But then another recording played. Her mocking me, calling me weak, bragging about how easy it was to fool him. My husband stepped back from her slowly, as if finally seeing her clearly for the first time. His gaze shifted to me, filled with confusion, hurt, but most of all realization. She tried to laugh it off, tried to reach for him again, but he pulled away sharply, and the silence in the room was heavier than anything I had ever felt. That was the moment her mask slipped completely, and she realized her game was over. Her face twisted with rage when she realized the trap had closed around her, and in an instant the sweetness drained away, leaving only the venom that had always been there. She raised her voice, shouting at me, calling me pathetic, accusing me of manipulating the situation, but every word she spoke only made her look guiltier. My husband stood frozen for a moment, his eyes darting between us as though he was piecing together the puzzle of lies he had been fed. Finally, he said in a low, steady voice, "How could you?" And I couldn't tell if he was speaking to her or himself. She stepped closer to him, desperate now, her hands trembling as she reached out, saying, "Don't listen to her. She twisted everything. You know me. You've always known me." But he recoiled, the look in his eyes sharp and unforgiving. And for the first time I saw her facade crack beyond repair. I seized the moment, holding my phone up once more, letting another recording spill into the air. This one of her mocking his loyalty, laughing about how gullible he was to believe she only wanted friendship. His jaw clenched, his fists tightening at his sides, and he whispered, "I trusted you." She tried to scream over the sound of her own words, but there was no way to erase them, no way to crawl back into the safety of her lies. The tension in the room snapped like a wire pulled too tight, and she suddenly turned her fury on me, hissing, "You think you've won? But you'll always be weak." I didn't flinch. I only stared back at her with the calm that comes from knowing the truth is on your side. My husband finally stepped between us, his voice firm now as he said, "Get out." She froze, eyes wide, as if the command cut deeper than anything else. "You don't mean that," she pleaded, but he repeated it louder, stronger, and this time there was no mistaking his resolve. She grabbed her purse, her eyes burning holes into me, and stormed out of our home with the slam of the door echoing through the walls. For a long moment, silence hung between us, heavy and suffocating, as my husband and I stood there, both breathing hard, the weight of betrayal still lingering in the air. The silence that followed her exit was almost unbearable, and I stood there clutching my phone like a weapon that had finally done its job. My husband sat down heavily on the couch, his head in his hands, and for the first time since all of this began, I saw the weight of realization sink into him. "How could I have been so blind?" he whispered, his voice thick with guilt. I sat beside him, my hand resting gently on his back, and though part of me wanted to shout at him for not seeing the signs sooner, I knew this moment wasn't about anger, it was about healing. I told him softly, "She fooled both of us once, and she thought she could do it again, but this time we stopped her." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with shame and gratitude, and I knew he finally understood the danger we had been in. Over the next few days, he cut all ties with her, completely blocking her number, deleting her from social media, and refusing to answer the knocks at our door when she tried to come back. Each attempt grew weaker until finally she disappeared altogether, leaving only the memory of her betrayal behind. For a while, I feared the damage would linger between us, that the doubt she planted would take root. But instead it became a lesson, a reminder of how fragile trust can be, and how fiercely it must be protected. My husband began to notice the little things again, my laughter, my patience, the love we had built together, and he started showing me in ways I hadn't realized I missed. For me, the ordeal became a quiet source of strength. I had faced the ghost of my past, the very person who once tore me apart, and instead of crumbling, I had stood tall, gathered my evidence, and fought back on my own terms. I didn't just survive her return, I ended it. Looking back now, I see it clearly. She thought she was clever, that she could walk into my life and destroy it again. But what she didn't realize is that resilience is stronger than betrayal. And though scars may remain, they remind me of what I overcame. My payback wasn't just exposing her lies to my husband, it was proving to myself that I would never be broken by her again. In the end, the victory wasn't hers and it never will be.